I am extremely honored to be your keynote speaker. Many of you wonder why. Simply a middle school debate banquet. But to me, it is so much more. It is a celebration of your wins and your losses and the things you have yet to accomplish and the things you have yet to imagine you are capable of doing. In this room, it sits the future of the city of Newark. Unlike many other middle schools across the nation, you all have an extreme opportunity to debate. This is unfortunate considering that I got the chance to witness the capabilities of these middle schoolers in this room. I was beyond impressed. Not only were y'all smart and passionate, but y'all are motivated.
Hi, my name is Marcia Brown, and I am the Vice Chancellor for External and Governmental Relations at the great Rutgers University in Newark. And I'm excited to talk about our great collegiate debate team. It's approximately 6 to 7 years old, and it's done phenomenal things in its journey toward this championship.
We're only the second team in the entire history of collegiate debate to win the double national championship crown. Cross-Examination Debate Association, they won the championship, and 2 weeks later they won the championship of the national debate. It's only been done one other time in the entire history of American collegiate debate, and that other time also had a New York student time. You're not here at the debate, although some of you are debate coaches. What you're here for is a game changer. Debate in the past, and debate in every other town and city in the United States is limited to a few highly motivated students who spend sometimes up to 40 hours a week.
What's going on, guys? My name is Malcolm Miner, and welcome back to our new session of the Newark Debater. This is our 3rd season, and this is actually the start of our brand new Alumni series today. This particular episode, we're going to be centered around Youthism in politics. Now, once we raise these amazing young leaders, what challenges do they face? Are there any barriers that they come across to? If so, what can we expect moving forward when it comes to politics and the very fibers of society as we know it? Today we have the pleasure of interviewing Newark's very own Rashawn Davis. Rashawn Davis is a former Newark debater and 2010 graduate of University High School, where he was salutatorian. He went on to major in government and peace studies at Georgetown University. During his senior year at Georgetown, Rashawn launched a campaign for the city council seat of Newark's West Ward, raising over $30,000. Rashawn became the youngest person in city history to appear on a municipal ballot, ultimately finishing 5th in a crowded field of 9. After the election, Rashawn worked as a community organizer for the American Civil Liberties Union of New Jersey, where he helped build the state's most comprehensive civilian complaint review board in Newark. He later earned a master's degree from New York University and now works for a nonprofit organization in New York City pushing for national justice reforms. Hello, Rashawn. Welcome to our show. It's a pleasure to have you. Welcome back home.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be back.
Awesome. So let's start at the heart. Were you born and raised in Newark?
I was born and raised West Ward.
West Ward.
Phillipsburg, Ivy Hill. If you're familiar with it, those are my old stomping grounds.
Okay, nice. So what do you think influenced you the most as a child, and why?
It's a heavy question. I mean, I think a lot of things, right? I think growing up in Newark, right? Like, there are a certain set of experiences about growing up in the city that teaches you a lot. You know what I mean? Humility, diversity. I think all those things kind of play into what it means to grow up in Newark. I think one is my family. My family is very close-knit. My family has always been about discussing politics, always been about discussing engagement, and so I think I got a lot of that sense from them. And then I just think a little bit everywhere else. Like, people ask me that all the time, like, you know, what inspired you growing up? What was that thing? And I think it was really a little bit of everything, right? The people I went to school with, the city I grew up in, the family I was born into, all of those things played a small part in who I am today.
So did you have family that were involved in politics in the city of Newark?
Not in the city of Newark, but I think generally, like, my family was always sort of aware about what was happening around the country, always had a sense of, you know, what was happening in the landscape of policy, what was happening in the landscape of politics, and so it made for some interesting discussions, you know, at dinner, at family functions. So I think I kind of picked up an interest in public service from that experience.
Okay, cool. So, what first got you into debate? We have to talk about it.
Debate. So, I didn't even really know what debate was, right? Until I remember my freshman year at university. It was just winter. I was looking for something to do, and I actually had a friend, Michael Hobbs, who's still around Newark. He worked for the city for a while, who said, "Listen, I'm trying this thing called debate. You know, I need a partner, right?" And so this is early days of debate. You know what I mean? When you're in 9th grade and you're not really going against anybody except folks around the city. You know, it's not a big deal. You come to a school on a Saturday and you debate. And so he was like, "You should come be my partner on Saturday. You know, you like to argue, let's come." And so ended up showing up to the debate, and the rest is kind of history, man. We got whooped that day. I think we lost all 3 of our rounds, but it ended up being something that I really found a lot of interest in, right? This idea of picking up an argument and debating that argument, the merits of that argument against other folks. And so, yeah, I had that first tournament and never looked back. I had some great friends at that tournament, Carlos, Elijah Smith, you know, folks who are common household names in the debate community now. You know, met those guys and joined the debate team and loved it.
Wow. Okay, dope. So tell me, what debate memory sticks out the most for you? Other than, of course, that first time, you know.
I think the debate memory that sticks out the most to me, I think we made it to the finals of a state tournament my sophomore year, and I remember just putting in so much effort into that tournament, and I really wanted to win it. And we ended up losing. Lost in the final round, actually the science. And we were talking about Kyla a little bit earlier. I think she was on that team as well, and so kudos to her for winning that. But that sticks out to me because we took that loss, and I just remember it was the first time that I really put so much energy into something, and it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to turn out. And just feeling so defeated at first, right? And then, you know, I remember everybody just giving me pep talks right after, saying, "Don't worry about it, great job." And next season we were right back on that side of debating, traveling to tournaments. And so I think that's one memory that sticks out to me, because that was really kind of my first lesson in fortitude, right? Like, when something doesn't go your way, you gotta keep pushing, you gotta keep going. And then I think secondly, right, is the community of debate. So not particularly one memory, but all of the memories, right? You know, it was my first opportunity to essentially get with my peers and travel across the country, you know, testing our intellectual skills, right? Debate is kind of the only activity that affords you the opportunity to do that, right? So I just remember, and I'm sure anybody who's ever debated can remember those late nights traveling across the state, traveling across the country. You know what I mean? The conversations you had in the back of a school bus with your peers, you know.
All the conversations. My mom was watching this, not too much.
The good, the bad, the ugly, right? So those are the things that stuck out to me, is that I developed, you know, a peer group, that I developed a community on the back of those buses, right, in those debate tournaments. And so, you know, that's how I remember debate, just, you know, not just for the wins and the losses of each round, but really the community that I had around me.
See, I think that's probably where we've seen each other, because I was at that tournament too. And I was also in finals.
Okay.
So I was definitely at that tournament.
Yeah.
So tell me, Rashawn, what is one personal challenge that you have overcome that you are most proud of thus far? And what did you do to overcome it?
I've had many challenges, I think, in my life, and I don't know if one in particular sticks out, because there's been many, right? There are the challenges of growing up in a city like Newark, right? Anyone who's grown up here knows that there are challenges that are associated with that, right?
Yeah.
And then there are, I went to a predominantly white institution, Georgetown University, in Washington, D.C., and there were a lot of moments there where I felt really out of my element, right? And so that was a challenge, to kind of go there and create my own space and create my own identity. And then I came back home and ran for office. And, that was a space where I also felt, out of the loop, because I was just coming home from D.C., and, politics is its own world. So, many challenges, and then, there are certainly personal challenges that you face throughout the process of growing up, maturing, overcoming, things like that. And so I think along this journey called life, we continue to pick up these lessons, right? And what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? So, yeah.
No, I think that's amazing. That is definitely amazing. So tell me, in your own words, what does it mean to lead? I know we talk about it, people are talking about what leadership is, and there's always this conversation about it, but what does it really mean to lead? What do you think?
I think to me, and I've actually thought a lot about this question, I've talked to a lot of friends about this, but, I'm convinced that leadership really is a matter of clarity, right? Like, I think so much of what we go through in life, and so much of our lives is just overloaded with things, right? Like ideas, people, social media, everything in our lives is flooded. There's barely a moment in our everyday lives where we have a chance to just take a step back and think clearly, right?
Yeah,
and so I think there is value in developing an ability to have clarity, right?
Okay.
To come into a situation and say, here's what's happening here. Here is how I carve a path to a success point, or here is how I carve a path to this end point, right?
Okay.
And it really is a skill set, because I think oftentimes when we're trying to map out our lives, when we're trying to map out a solution, things can get, kind of jumbled, because there are so many things coming at you at once. And so I think leadership is really about developing that sense of clarity, that you have a sense of where you're going, you have a sense of how to analyze the situation. And so to me, some of my favorite leaders and the best leaders I've seen are people who have a clear sense of where they want to go, who have a clear sense about how to handle a situation and how to manage a situation. And so that's something I aspire to always be able to find clarity no matter where I am and what situation I'm in, because that's something I've seen leaders that I admire do.
So is there anyone specific that you would tag that to? Because I know you described what kind of leaders you like, so, or that you aspire to, excuse me. But is there anyone specific that rings a bell for you? That you also just, you always go to?
Really so many, man. I think so I'll reference Frederick Douglass now, because I'm actually reading a biography that came out not too long ago about Frederick Douglass, right?
Okay.
And this is a man who just had immense clarity, right? You think of somebody who was literally born in shackles, right? He was born in Chesapeake, Virginia, into slavery. This is a guy who knew that despite what everyone was telling him, you could imagine being a slave born in the 1840s, and no one around you knows how to read, no one around you knows anything about politics, knows anything about advocacy, right? And still having that foresight and clarity to say that I know who I am, I know what I can accomplish, and finding the resources to teach yourself to read, to emancipate yourself from slavery. And this man, when he was 25, 30 years old, was traveling around the world speaking about the ills of slavery. There was no precedent for that. There was no one who had done that before, right?
Yeah.
And so in order to accomplish something like that, you need immense clarity, right? And so you know, that's somebody I reference because I'm reading his book recently, but there have been many people throughout history who've had that kind of foresight and that kind of clarity. You know, the Ella Bakers of the world, the Fannie Lou Hamers of the world.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Even to modern day, right? Like the Barack Obamas, people who, you know, you are what you dare in this world, right? And have that sense of clarity and have that sense of focus.
Wow. Wow. You know, someone that makes me think about this is that you just, you know, made me think about in my own head would be someone like Toni Morrison. Right. To me, she's a leader. She has immense clarity.
Right.
Oh my gosh, her words, where she's going with the struggle of Black America and where it has been into where it is now and where it possibly can go. It's just amazing.
And you know, I think people will sometimes laugh when you say clarity, right? And it's a subtle thing, right? But I think the Toni Morrison example is a great one because clarity is such a subtle attribute, but it's such an important attribute because, as I said, so much of our lives is influenced by other people, by other things, right? And for someone to sit down and say, you know, forget about what the world is, here's what the world ought to be, right? And have that clarity to go forth in that vision, despite what people are saying, despite what the status quo looks like, and keep pushing forward. That's a leader. That's somebody with clarity. That's someone with foresight. That's someone who, frankly, doesn't give a shit what other people think, right?
Exactly.
And that's the leader.
Exactly. So, what possessed you, since we're talking about leadership, what possessed you to run for city council when you did? Because I remember reading about that when it was going down. I remember being really all eyes on that election. Like, what's happening?
Right. It's funny because
I go. I'm really waiting for Fire to say something. I go.